towards making music because that's what I liked. I didn't know anyone who did that as a career. It wasn't a realistic career path.
Where do you stand with wrestling now?
Absolutely love it. I watch more than 8 hours every week.
More than 8 hours?
Yeah. Well, there's
every week.
Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of pro wrestling on TV.
And you just love it.
I absolutely love it. It's a really beautiful, fine art form. It's storytelling taken to the next level. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's American opera.
I was on a television show for 3 seasons about female wrestlers.
The Glow Show?
Yeah.
How was it? How was the experience?
It's great. I mean, I wasn't a wrestling guy, and I'm not a wrestling guy in the show either. I'm a film director who gets stuck with the job of making a wrestling show.
Yeah.
So I had to educate myself so I don't come at it. When did you start loving wrestling?
Around the same time I started loving music, like very young.
And there's also all that rawness. It's very punk rock in a way.
Absolutely. It's definitely DIY, crazy. The stories they tell are reckless in a way that you don't get to see in the mainstream. There'd be violence towards people in a completely inappropriate way on a regular basis. But it makes sense because you're setting up bad guys and good guys. So the bad guy has to do something really despicable to be a bad guy. So they do some things that are really despicable. But because it's like this hyper real, not real, it's like you're not going to the movies. They're not really characters. They are, but they aren't. It's like that line. It's like what's real, what's not. And the fact that they work reality into it. Like if a guy gets hurt, that becomes part of the storyline. But then sometimes they say a guy gets hurt and he didn't get hurt. It's only the storyline. Or sometimes like one of the characters gets divorced and then he might be getting divorced, but maybe it's just a story and you never know. It's this like parallel reality always going on and it never ends and it goes on forever. It's amazing.
So it's a perfect reflection of life in a controlled way for you.
I would say it's closer. It's more honest. It's the most honest form of information in our society. Like pro wrestling is the most accurate representation of life.
Dude, like right now you've got heels in government. Donald Trump was the biggest heel and the best heel that ever lived.
Yes. And by the way, in the WWE Hall of Fame. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame. Makes sense. It's like the best heel president has to be in the Hall of Fame.
But do you find it upsetting in any way that it's bleeding into our politics?
No, because it always did. Now we see it. I feel like the beauty of where we are now is it's always been wrestling. It's always been wrestling. Just now we know it. It's like the curtain's been drawn back and we see, it's pro wrestling. All this time we thought it was real.
Was there ever a dream of yours to be like Vince McMahon? Like, cause I mean, you funded some promotions.
Not like Vince McMahon, but I did invest in a wrestling company. Also, like all the things that I make out of a desire as a fan of not being served. And there was this window in time in pro wrestling so when I was a kid, wrestling was great. And then there was a second league called the NWA in the South. And that was great. And both leagues were kind of going along great for a long time. And then the Rock Wrestling connection happened. Do you know about this?
Cyndi Lauper.
When Cyndi Lauper got involved and it became more of it changed. It changed for a minute. And in the success of it changing, it got very popular in that change, more than it had ever been. It went from like cable TV to network TV during that time because it got so popular. The new audience was mostly kids. Whereas before wrestling was kids, but it was everybody. And it was sort of adult entertainment that kids loved. Right. Like horror movies were originally made for adults, but kids loved them. And it's like that. It's like genre, it's like genre exploitation movies, all of that kind of stuff, the harder stuff. It's made for adults, but kids always love it because it's radical. It goes past it breaks the rules. It's taboo. And then wrestling in this moment of the Rock Wrestling connection, a lot of kids started watching, and then they changed the nature of the stories and the characters to be more like kids superheroes. And it became much more of a kids show, much less, guys hitting each other with chairs and bleeding all over the place, because it was for kids. Yeah. And when that happened, the NWA, the Southern League, was still hard. But then as WWE got more kid-friendly, NWA, which always basically imitated whatever Vince did, then they followed suit. And then everybody was doing wrestling for kids. So I'm a hardcore wrestling fan for, the craziness of it. And now it kind of got dumbed down to be for kids. Yeah. So I supported a new league starting really just for the purpose of doing kind of old time, hardcore, blood and guts wrestling, life and death and, offensive wrestling, the good kind, the real kind. It's like dirty jokes. I like dirty jokes. If all jokes became clean, I might want to help somebody do dirty jokes, like support someone doing dirty jokes just because they have to stay. We need dirty jokes.
Yeah. They're still around.
Good. I hope so.
Well, so how